What's up everyone, it's your boy Nick and this is Wolf and welcome back to another episode. Yeah! So in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly how we built and installed multiple window casings the easy way. So you're going to want to stick around for this one. And as always, yeah! So to start this project off, we got to remove the old trim, the old casing and the old blinds. And there's a few ways of doing that without causing too much damage to the walls behind it. So let me show you how that's done. Yeah! So I'll start off by removing the old blinds. And this is pretty simple really, you just unclip the mounting brackets that they're mounted to and then slide them out. And then I just go ahead and unscrew the brackets. So what I've experienced in the past is if you score the paint between the trim and the wall itself, you're less likely to peel half the drywall off with it when you take the trim off. And in this case, our trim is going to be wider than the existing trim, so the new trim will cover any scarring that I will make. Once I'd broken the painted seal between the trim and the wall, I then proceeded to pry off the old trim using a flat bar and a hammer. So I have to say you can skip a lot of the work and just replace the trim and keep the existing window casings. But for some reason the previous owner of this house obviously had teething issues or something like that and went out the casing pretty bad. So in this case we're going to replace the whole thing. Also, if you want to just replace the trim, it's a good idea to cut the paint between the trim and the casing as well. That will stop any issues of paint peeling off and having less things to repair in the future. When you put the new trim on, you can always cover that scarring line by bringing it in a little bit more than what it was there originally. Once all the trim was removed, I then began to remove all the old casings the exact same way. Okay, so now that all the old stuff is ripped out, it's time to start building the new stuff and getting that in. For the material, I'm using 1x6 primed MDF for the casing, and then 1x3.5 primed MDF for the baseboard. So most big box stores will have this in, and it comes in many different shapes and sizes to suit the style you have or the style you want. For me, I like that wide, clean, modern look, so that's what I got. So I set the fence on my table saw to just over 5 inches, which is the distance from the inside of the window to the outside of the drywall. And then proceeded to cut all the casings to that measurement. I then, on my miter saw, proceeded to cut the casings to the width of the window opening. I also cut them to the height, allowing the thickness of material top and bottom, allowing about 1/4 inch of wiggle room in both directions. Okay, so we have all the pieces for the casings cut. Let's assemble those and then we'll make a start on the trim. Yeah! To assemble the casings, I'm using my brad nailer with 1.5 inch nails and wood glue. I applied a bead of glue to the ends of one of the side pieces and then lined up the top piece to that. I then pinned through the top piece into the side piece, making sure that they all line up and sit flush. I followed the exact same steps on the opposite side and the bottom part of the casing. I then clean up any glue residue with a damp cloth. Now the casing is made up and it's dry, you want to start marking out for the trim. And a good way of getting a consistent gap or reveal for the trim is by using a combination square. I like to set my square to 1/4 inch though you can really set it to whatever measurement you require for your own trim. Using my combination square, I made a 1/4 inch mark on all 4 of the corners on all 4 of the casings. I also made a couple of marks in between just to help align the trim. I took a measurement for each of the trim pieces by measuring from the corner marks on the width and the height of the casings. I set my miter saw to a 45-degree angle and then proceeded to cut the trim pieces to the required measurements. Once the trim pieces were cut, I then cut in dominoes to help with alignment, though this isn't 100% necessary and you can totally skip this step. To attach the trim, I applied a bead of glue to the outside of the edge of the casing. I then lined up the miters of the trim piece to the corner marks and then proceeded to pin through the trim into the casing, securing it in place. I then glued the miter of the next piece of trim and then slid it into place. I adjusted the corner till it sat tight and then used a bit of painter's tape to hold it while the glue dried. I then proceeded to pin the trim to the casing using my brad nailer, cleaning up any glue with a damp cloth as I go along. It's important while you're attaching the trim to the casing that it's lined up with the 1/4 inch marks that you made. This just keeps everything consistent and your gaps equal. Once the casings have dried, I then peeled back all the tape and then filled any of the pin marks with some filler. Everything I use in this video will be linked in the description down below. I then gave everything a good sand ready for caulking and paint. Okay, so now that all 4 have been made up and sanded nice and smooth, it's now time to caulk the seams in between the trim and the casing. This just creates a nice transition in between the trim and the casing, ready for paint. I'm using a white caulk that I picked up from my local Home Depot, though I will link what I have down in the description down below. I cut a very small hole at an angle at the end of the nozzle and then proceeded to caulk any seams in the trim and the casing. I smoothed over and then cleaned up any excess of the caulk using my finger. Once the caulking had dried, it was time to bring them in and get them installed. I put one casing temporarily in place and adjusted it so it sat middle of the opening, and then set my laser level to the bottom of that one piece that's set. I then laid the piece down and then applied PL construction adhesive to the outside. I put it back into place and then lined it up with the laser level. Once I was happy with the position, I then pushed it tight to the window and then permanently pinned it into place. Following the exact same steps as before, I then lined all the casings up with the laser level and then pinned them permanently into place. Once all the casings were attached, I then filled any of the pinholes with the same filler. I then proceeded to sand everything smooth. And for the final steps before painting, I caulked the gaps between the trim and the wall and then the gaps between the casing and the window. For the paint, I'm using Benjamin Moore Advanced, which came highly recommended to me, and after using it, I would highly recommend it myself. I've always hated the painting stage, mostly because I completely suck at it. I'm terrible at painting. But using this stuff, it goes on so smooth and clean, it makes everything so much easier. The best part is that it's self-leveling, so if you use it with good technique and a good brush, you can hide all the brush marks in the paint. It's like using an oil-based paint, but without the horrible toxins, and it cleans up like a water-based paint. So yeah, Benjamin Moore Advanced, definitely a highly recommended paint for trim. Once everything was painted, I then attached new blinds, which I have a video of this coming out in a couple of days in more detail, so if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to check that out. And that pretty much sums up this video. I'm really happy how this turned out, from what the old trim looked like to how clean and modern looking it looks now. I'm stoked. And if you liked this video or found it at all useful, please let me know in the comments down below. I am going through a major renovation in my house right now, so I have a ton of these little videos in between my usual gnarly, real modern, big epic videos, so you're going to want to subscribe to check all these out. And as always, if you got any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to ask me down below. If you liked this video or found it at all useful, please like, subscribe, and share with every single person that you know. If you want to go see some more day-to-day stuff and see what videos are coming up, go follow me at RadDadBuilds on Instagram. And as always, stay rad, peace. Yeah!